bad news is that that's the worst the Blue Jackets have looked all year. The good news is it's still early in the season and they can only go up from here. We're going to talk about last night's game on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also left that you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. To visit FanDuel.com to get started. So I said in the intro that we're going to talk about last night's game. That's clearly a lie. We're going to talk about Saturday's game, I believe it was. The good, the bad, the ugly, you know how it is. We're going to talk a little bit about the good, specifically in that game, because I feel like there was a non-zero amount of good, despite the fact that it was, I think, by far the worst game that they've played so far this season. And there's some new lines in practice that I want to talk about as well. So we're going to talk about all of that. Let's talk about the game itself, because lots happened in it. It was considering there was only 4 goals scored. It felt like there was a lot going on. The Blue Jackets didn't play super great. There were a couple of standout guys. Igor Chinakov, I thought, was excellent. David Jiricek, I thought, was very good. We'll talk about him in a second. I want to talk about the goaltending, though, first, actually, because it's funny, and I feel like we had this problem a little bit last year, which was whenever the goaltending showed up, the scoring didn't, you know? And lo and behold, the goaltending shows up, and the Blue Jackets only score 1 goal, which is their lowest total so far. It's funny, in the space of 2 games against the Wild, the Blue Jackets, I believe, have scored 3 goals total, which is the lowest number of goals that they've scored against any other single opponent in a game this season. So, like, they scored 1 goal against the Wild and also 2 goals against the Wild in the season opener, but then every other game, they've scored at least 3. So I think that probably is more of a hint as to how good the Wild are. And I think Philip Gustafsson was excellent against the Blue Jackets, made 23 of 24 saves. But I thought this was, again, maybe the best game that any Blue Jackets goalie has had so far this season. Just a shame that it was kind of the worst game for a lot of other people. But I thought Tarasov looked a lot more calm in net. I feel like he's kind of been not fighting it a little bit, but I feel like there's been a lot of flailing going on with Tarasov. I thought he was really, very good against the Wild. He did his best to keep the Blue Jackets in it. He allowed 1 goal early. I'm just pulling up the summary. He allowed 1 goal early in halfway through the first period, and then didn't concede again until about 3 minutes into the third period. So it was 1-0 for the vast majority of this game. And again, he really kept them in it. That first period I thought was absolutely shocking by the Blue Jackets. They got outshot 13-4. I believe they had 2 shots on goal total for the 3 power plays that they had. They picked it up in the second, outshot the Wild 12-6, and then the Wild picked it back up in the third period, which is where they kind of broke the game open. Kirill Kaprizov scored, Matsuro Corello scored. It's 3-0 with about 11 minutes left to play. Chinakov breaks the shutout, and again, he was one of the stronger Blue Jacket skaters, I thought. And frankly, he's been one of the strongest Blue Jacket skaters all season long, which has been really fun. And I tweeted about this a little bit, but I know everyone was really caught up in, man, Ken Johnson looks like a real monster out there. He is just skating around guys and doing whatever he wants. And I feel like it was kind of lost in the hype about Ken Johnson, and also kind of the hype about Sillinger having a strong start, Fantilli having a strong start, of Igor Chinakov has been excellent for this team. He's currently leading the Blue Jackets in scoring with, I want to say, 7 points in 5 games, 3 goals, which is also good for leading the team. And his underlying stats have been very good as well. Now, I think that's probably to the benefit of his line mates specifically. I think he and Marchenko have always played well together. I think he's gelled really well with Marchenko and Monahan. Obviously, that was supposed to be the Gaudreau spot that then turned into the Jenner spot that is now the Chinikov spot. We'll talk about that top line in a minute here. But for me, really, the three standouts in this game were Tarasov, Chinikov, and also David Juracek, who had to fight to get into the lineup, and the Blue Jackets eventually had to go 11 forward, 7 defensemen to fit him in the lineup. I don't know why that is necessarily. I don't know why you couldn't scratch, for example, Jack Johnson, but that's a whole other thing, you know. But they went 7 defensemen. David Juracek actually finished with more ice time than Jake Christensen and Jordan Harris, which surprised me a little bit. But I thought he had a really good game, and again, the underlying stats prove that as well. I like to use, just for like a quick glance, is Hockey Stat Cards, I believe it is, at Hockey Stat Cards on Twitter, and they do like a little recap for the game in terms of like individual offense and defense, team offense, team defense, special teams, and to kind of, it's a really easy and quick look at like what is, like, who was good, who was bad. Does the eye test match up with the underlying stats? And it's the sheet for the Blue Jackets was not great against this game. I think they were mostly outplayed by the Wild. I think it's fair to say, like, when you look at the two sheets next to each other, almost exclusively the Wild had excellent games. Almost exclusively the Blue Jackets did not have excellent games. Some guys had more good offense, some guys had more good defense, but really the only 3 players that were kind of what I would think is, again, good, and they don't have goalies in this. This is all skating. Chinikov was at the top of the list. Juracek was second, then Marchenko was third. David Juracek sacrificed some team offense, but his individual offense was very high. His team defense was also very high, which I think that's been one of the knocks on him, has been that his defense isn't good enough and that he's not fast enough to get back, etc. But I thought he had a very good game, and I love to see the individual stats back that up as well. So, to summarize, no, it wasn't a very good game for the Blue Jackets, and I think, the post-game content also suggested that. I think Zach Werenski talked about how they need to be better as a group. He needs to be better as an individual man. Dean Eberson was like, yeah, this was the worst game that we played, but we're going to go over the video, we're going to watch it, we're going to, the coaches are going to get together, and it's not going to happen again. So it was kind of refreshing to hear something like that from a coach, because I feel like last year we heard a lot, and I was guilty of saying this as well. We heard a lot of, well, yeah, we didn't play very well, but we made some steps forward. I think we're close. I think, we had a lot of platitudes from Pascal Vincent. We're not getting those same platitudes from Dean Eberson. He's like, yeah, we weren't very good. We'll talk about it. We'll do better next time. Which I think is much more preferable to, well, yeah, but this, that, and the other, and this is the reason we didn't do very well. He was just like, yeah, no, we kind of sucked. Which is kind of, again, refreshing to hear. But the team knows it, the coaches know it. I do think that they will put a better effort in next game. I'm going to be interested to see what the official lineup is next game, because that's kind of what I want to talk about next, is the Blue Jackets are changing things up, which I do and do not like for various reasons. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about FanDuel, because you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook for a reason. So when you get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page where you place your bets. You don't have to have 17 different ESPN tabs open, or trying to pass the nonsense that is the NHL.com stats page, or like the game updates or anything there. You can do it all on FanDuel, which is so great. I use it a lot for fantasy hockey, but you can use it for betting as well, and you should, in fact, use it for betting. And here's the best bit. If you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel.com, they're going to give you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You don't have to win. You don't have to lose. Just place that first $5 bet and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets that you can use on whatever you want. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We've talked about what I didn't like about the game. We've talked about what I did like about the game. And it looks like there's some changes happening in the lineup as well. Obviously, there's some missing pieces, shall we say. Just 3 of the top 9 are out right now. And I think Voronkov is probably the closest to returning, but I don't know that we'll see him for at least another month. Kent Johnson will be back at some point, we hope. Boone Jenner, I'm genuinely not expecting to see Boone Jenner before March. Genuinely, he might come back for the outdoor game and then immediately go back on IR, but there's some movement happening, and there's some good stuff and some bad stuff in this, and some of it is kind of the same thing, if that makes sense. So they are breaking up the top line, which I don't necessarily like, because I think that, why mess with a good thing? That Chinakhov, Monahan, Marchenko line has been the driving force behind this team for the first 4 games of the season. And then they weren't terrible. They were, again, one of the better lines against the Wild. I didn't mention Sean Monahan in the previous segment, but he was the weakest of the 3 players, but he still was, I think, 4th or 5th in terms of best Blue Jackets when you look at the underlying stats. They're putting Sillinger up there, which is, I am not sure about that. I think Sillinger is one of the few legitimate centers on this team, especially, with guys like Jenner, Voronkov, Johnson all out. Those guys ostensibly all play center. I think Voronkov is probably the best of them at center, not the best player, the best of them at center. So moving Sillinger to wing is confusing to me, but Dean Everson talked about it, about moving Chinakhov off that line specifically, and he's put that second line together of Mikhail Pucha with Adam Fantilli and Yegor Chinakhov, which I like that line a lot, actually, and he's explicitly said that if things go badly, they can always put Chinakhov back on that top line, but he wants to get Adam Fantilli some help, which is great. I love this. Because I actually talked about that maybe actually during the most recent game. I think I said something on the lines on Twitter of I wish Adam Fantilli had wingers, and now he does. Now he does have wingers. Mikhail Pucha has been a real surprise of the season. I'm not sure that he's like top 6 material, but he's got to be better than putting like Zach Aston Reese on Fantilli's wing, and that's no like discredit to Zach Aston Reese, but his game is not suited to a second line offensive role. Mikhail Pucha, I think, is. And listen, they're giving the kid a chance. 4th round pick from Finland, was really good in Cleveland last year, has stuck out this year, or stuck it out this year, I should say. Has avoided all of the roster cuts, the send downs. He's been in the lineup. I think he played 7 of 8 preseason games and has been in every regular season game so far. Why not? If you want to get Fantilli going, and I think that's what this team needs, is you can't get all of your offense from that one line. You need to give Fantilli some help, because the wingers that he's been given thus far have just not been good enough. Like, he's been given James Van Riemsdyk, Kevin Labanc he's played with. He had Zach Aston Reese and Danforth in the game against the Wild, I want to say. Like, he had, I think, what was it, like 2 periods of playing with Kent Johnson before he got hurt and left. And like, that's really the only help that Fantilli has had at all this season. So I don't love that they've split up that top line. I do love that Fantilli has been given someone like Chinakhov, who is obviously, red hot, having a really hot start to the season. And if he can kind of kickstart Fantilli into going, and then, Mikhail Pucha just kind of comes along for the ride, like, that's a fun top 6. I don't know that Sillinger is going to be as effective on that top line as they maybe want him to be. But then I'm looking at this lineup and I'm like, man, who do I put there instead? If you take Chinakhov off that line, like, who do you put there instead? Danforth? No. Like, JVR? No. Something's got to give. And I do think that it's maybe not like as soon as things start going wrong, but I think if things do start going wrong, I think Chinakhov will find himself back up on that top line, because if it turns out that splitting the offense like that and spreading the offense, spreading the goals out like that is not working for this team, then I would rather have one line that works than 2 lines that sort of kind of maybe sometimes work, So we'll see what happens. The Blue Jackets are playing Toronto tonight. which that should be an interesting game because Toronto seems to have had a bunch of interesting games so far this season. I will say also it looks like David Jiricek is going to be back in. I don't know whether they are again. They might decide to roll 11-7 again with Labanc as the odd man out. But as it stands right now, Werenski Provorov stays the same. Christiansen Severson, who again, like I like that pairing a lot. I actually like this top four a whole lot. If they're not going to play, David Jiricek in the top four, like this is probably as good as the top four is going to get. And then Johnson and Jiricek on the third line, in the third pairing. I don't love that as a pairing. I'm glad that Jiricek is getting ice time. I think that like pairing is going to get burned by someone, probably William Nylander, based on just how the Maple Leafs are looking at the minute. And we'll talk about the Maple Leafs in just a second here. But looks like Jordan Harris is the odd man out, which I also don't love. Again, I really, really like that Harris-Jiricek pairing in the preseason. Obviously, preseason is not regular season, as the Penguins and Rutger McGroarty have learned. But it's frustrating that Harris continues to not really be able to get a look in. I don't think he had a great game against Minnesota. I don't think he wasn't terrible, but he also wasn't like great. So like I can see their argument for like keeping him out of the lineup, but you can't like. I don't know, man. There's no world in which I'm gonna be like, yeah, you should play Jack Johnson over literally any healthy player. That being said, Jack Johnson, look again, according to the underlying stats, which take with a grain of salt, Jack Johnson actually was one of the better defensemen for the Blue Jackets against the Wild. So maybe they're seeing something that I'm not. I do still think that Jordan Harris should be a full-time, should be an everyday player in this lineup. Provorov and Werenski had a terrible night against the Wild. Hopefully they managed to pick it back up against the Leafs. Again, I've said, as much as I hate giving credit to Provorov, moving him to the right side and putting him with Werenski actually has been really great to watch. They have like really complemented each other in a way that is fun. And I do think that when they first started this, I think I was quite vocal on, I'm not sure this is going to work because I don't think that those two skill sets are going to be compatible. Hey, I was wrong. I hold my hands up, They were not very good against the Wild, but again, no one was very good against the Wild. So I'm really, really expecting a bounce back against the Maple Leafs, which we will talk about in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better. When it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. In the minute that I've been talking to you, 23 hires have been made on Indeed, according to their data. So you can get unparalleled access to job seekers with over 350 million monthly unique visitors globally, according to Indeed data, and you get extended reach through Glassdoor as well. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform. You don't need to have, the really terrible bit of job hunting where you're like trying to play phone tag or email tag, or you're leaving a lot of voicemails and then they leave you a voicemail and that goes on for several days. You can use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging, so you can connect with those candidates faster. And 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, not just the fastest ones. I use Indeed when I am unlucky enough to be job hunting. It's the only site I use. I just think it's the best one. It's the easiest to use. And I found the best jobs on there. So I can only imagine that it's just as good when you are hiring as when you are being hired. So join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. I want to talk about tonight's game for a little while because the Blue Jackets are going to be facing the Maple Leafs, who are having a fairly Maple Leaf-shaped start to their season, which is that they got shut out 1-0 by Montreal in the season opener and then have won 4 of the last 5. Got goalied against New York, which we expect that from the Rangers at this point. But they're 4-2 on the season so far. Blue Jackets are 2-3. 3-3 feels very different from 2-4. Blue Jackets really need a win here. so far they're alternating between winning and losing, which again I don't love because I would love for them to like string some games together, but we'll see what happens. Again, the goaltending for the Maple Leafs has been very solid. Anthony Stolarz has been excellent for them. He's 3-2 and has only allowed 9 goals on 145 shots. He's got a 938 save percentage. Dennis Hildeby has only played 1 game, but he got the win in that game, his first NHL win. I suspect we will probably see Hildeby in Columbus tomorrow night. Stolarz played last night against, I want to say Tampa was who they were playing. So it would make sense if they were to play the backup again. The Blue Jackets are a much less threatening opponent than Tampa right now. But I feel like that's something that the Blue Jackets could turn to their advantage. In terms of players to watch for skaters, like it's William Nylander. You know it's William Nylander. His line has been extremely good, and Mitch Marner has also been very good. Austin Matthews has been kind of quiet. He's only got 3 goals in his first 6 games of the season, which probably means that he's due for like a breakout game or two, probably against the Blue Jackets, because again, that's just kind of how this goes. But the Maple Leafs are looking about as Maple Leaf shaped as usual. Shockingly, they're actually much better defensively than offensively right now. They are only allowing 2.17 goals per game and scoring 3 1/3 goals per game. So they're basically winning every game 3-2 if you average that out. Blue Jackets continue to have exactly the same goals for per game as goals against per game as 3.6, but the power play is clipping along at a surprising rate. The penalty kill needs improvement. I feel like we all know that. Again, shockingly for the Maple Leafs, their penalty kill is quite good. Their power play is struggling. I feel like the Leafs went like 4 or 5 games without scoring a power play goal. Like it was a whole big thing, and then they finally did it. I want to say against LA, their 4th game of the season. I think they scored 2 or 3 power play goals in that game, and it kind of has opened the floodgates a little bit. But I still wouldn't I would not give this team the opportunity on the power play because it's maybe the most insane power play unit in the NHL. Maybe even for the last 10 years. I know that again a really terrifying power play unit for a minute there was the heyday of the kind of the mid-20s Blackhawks, where you had Taves, Kane, Marian Hossa, Patrick Sharp, and Duncan Keith. It feels like a similar power play unit with Toronto of you've got your Nylander, your Marner, your Tavares, your Matthews, and your Riley. That's not a power play that I want to play against. So we'll see how it goes. Again, I'm expecting the Blue Jackets to bounce back from their game against the Wild. Playing the Leafs should be a good test. Hopefully, you can take advantage of having a less experienced goalie. My guess is Tarasov probably starts tomorrow night. That'll be back-to-back starts for him. Elvis has returned from his... he needed a break, so he's returned from that. They have sent Jet Greaves back down to Cleveland, so it will be, I assume, Tarasov backing up. Tarasov starting, Merzlikins backing up, and then we'll probably see Merzlikins in the game on, I want to say Thursday is the next game after tonight. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully Tarasov can have another solid performance because he really was very good against the Wild. 34 shots, 31 saves. By far the best performance that any goalie has had for the Blue Jackets this season. It's been it's been a short season, I should say, but hopefully Tarasov can continue that momentum that he built in that one game, and hopefully the shooters show up as well, because that was really the problem with this game, was that no one remembered how to score until Igor Chinakhov with like a minute and a half left against the Wild, so they didn't get a shutout. So I'm going to knock on wood because I could only use my hockey powers for evil. In terms of predictions, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say an Adam Fantilli goal is going to kick things off. I think putting him with Chinakhov is a good thing. And I think he has shown flashes of really, really excellent play, and he will pass the puck to nobody because whoever he's playing with just isn't there. And is that maybe his fault a little bit? Possibly, but I do feel like they just haven't given him wingers that are at the same level as he is. So I'm really interested to see what he does with a guy like Chinakhov, who is on his level. And Chinakhov's maybe the fastest guy on the team as well. Like, he's got some wheels on him, so he can keep up with Fantilli, no problem. So I'm really interested to see what that is as a duo. So I'm going to go ahead and say Adam Fantilli's going to kick the scoring off. I do think it's probably going to be like, let's say a 4-3 game, or maybe a 4-2 game with an empty netter. I'm gonna, you know what? I've bet on the Blue Jackets every game thus far this season, so I'm gonna do it again because this is Locked On Blue Jackets. This is not Locked On Maple Leafs. Blue Jackets win, let's say 4-3, probably in overtime because this team hates me, and an Adam Fantilli goal to kick things off. And that's kind of all I've got for today. Tomorrow we are going to break down tonight's game. Hopefully it'll be fun. We'll find out. I will say that even the losses this season have mostly been fun to talk about and rewatch, minus the Wild game on Saturday. So we'll have some fun with it tomorrow. And that's, like I said, that's it for me today. I've been Jeff Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at _Jacob Foster. I think I literally just said that. You can follow the show at literally every podcasting app of choice. You can find us on YouTube. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.